So, Gabe, the reality is that sellers bear a big burden in activating the television identity graph, right? Particularly traditional TV sellers. Tell me a little bit about all the work that has to go on behind the scenes in order to make it happen.
Sure. You can think about this, or we think about this, in essentially three parts. Let's assume the goal is an audience-driven, cross-platform campaign anchored in linear television, where we're also going to deliver into certain MVPD inventory. It's called VOD. We're going to do some OTT inventory. We're also going to deliver into our digital FEP inventory as well, as a complement to a linear TV buy. The baseline is it's audience-driven, right? And so, okay, who is that audience? We define that audience for the linear TV audience. We might have to we might have to buy some data, we might have to rent some data, we might have to license some data. Either from a syndicated provider or from one of our viewing partners. Cool, so there's a data cost there that we're doing. There's then the matching of all of that data, take that segment and transport it to all those endpoints so it can be activated there. So right out of the gate, our challenge is, yes, we want to activate that single audience everywhere, but there is both the data licensing as well as the data transport costs that have to be activated before we can even think about doing the campaign. Great, we've done that. And with all of this, our job is make this easy for the buyer, make this seamless, make this simple. So step one, we do the targeting. Step two, we actually have to activate it. So how do we plan the campaign? For us, this has been a major product investment in first our linear optimization platform, which is Vantage. So with Vantage, what we need to do is get really, really smart about how very specific target audiences are watching television. Both in linear as well as in other environments. So that's big investments for us in data science to understand not just how many target impressions can we expect in each unit on our portfolio's weekly schedule, but also getting into things like how do we start to predict reach? How do we start to look at individual panelists or individual households and get a sense of where the places are just within linear where we can find incremental reach against the segment? And then go and try to extend that into other environments where we can find even more incremental reach. Again, this is a huge investment for us. We are on year 5 of developing Vantage. We feel really good about the product and the outcomes that we can deliver, but a ton of work for us. This is a serious thing. This is what I do all day, is think about how do we do that better. And then finally, there's measurement, right? So if we start with targets, we think about planning and optimization, and then on the back end, we need to measure this. We have a set of standard measurement partners where we work with the currency providers for linear television. But then we also need to measure what's going on with the MVPD, what's going on in the OTT environment, what's going on in the digital environment. Sometimes we're going to need to do an attribution or measurement study on top of that, where in a lot of cases, in almost all the cases, we as the programmer are called upon not just to coordinate the creation and delivery of that study, but also to pay for it. And look, all of this is, you've reached this sort of state in the industry where this is just the default setting. And it doesn't really look like digital. I think some of these costs live in different places on the digital side of things. Certainly like data costs aren't always borne by the publisher, if ever. Whereas we just assume that's how it's going to work for these data-driven linear campaigns as well as these cross-platform extensions. So there's a lot of work that goes into this, and there are significant hard costs that go into it. Why are we doing it? Because we think it's the right answer.
So at what point do you become the agent, also known as the agency in some ways, right? Although you're approaching a sort of, you are a supplier, but you don't have a really small, you have a pretty big pool of supply, right? Yeah. So at what point do all these value-added services ultimately extend into a suite of planning tools or buying tools for marketers that the agency's role becomes a much more sort of gray matter, if you will?
Look, I think there are lanes where we feel very comfortable in what we can deliver. But we fundamentally believe that the agency and the client are driving their media strategy, and the tools that we are offering are there for them to activate and to complement how they look at the entire marketplace. Now, do we have some responsibilities in the marketplace to say, like, okay, how can we make this easier for everyone involved? And whether that's appropriate connections to their planning systems, whether that's how we deliver and exchange data back and forth about performance. Like, those are conversations we love to have. Certainly the work we're doing with OpenAP to bring a lot of that to life, and to not just standardize, but build an API layer so all of this data can be shared cleanly. Like, big believers there. But like, look, our best and most successful campaigns and our best and most successful relationships are with the agencies and clients who look at the Vantage portfolio of tools and say, I have a strategy. How can I use this to activate my strategy? And when we're having a good conversation, we come up with great answers where, you know, an advertiser can say, look, I know I'm reaching my target on these 3 networks with you, Viacom, but I think there's more reach across your portfolio. So don't worry about those 3 networks. Find me more reach on this specific target across the rest of your networks. And that's a great conversation, right? It's data-driven, led by the agency and client, where we're putting to use the tools we've invested in, and it gets them great results. And you know, those are the situations that, you know, we sort of live for. That's where this is, and I think it's where it should be.